All set?
Good afternoon and welcome to the MUZEO's online Lunch and Learn. I am Carol Latham, the Community Outreach Coordinator for the MUZEO Museum and Cultural Center in Anaheim. And it is our wish that you, your family, and circle of concern are all safe and healthy now, as well as you stay that way. The MUZEO is a cultural and community hub with a mission to engage the community in exploring and celebrating our diverse heritage and culture, and as well the arts. And we do this through creative educational programming like this, events and exhibits. And we certainly appreciate you taking the time to join us this afternoon. Be sure to add your questions in the chat, and they can be either privately entered or open to everyone to see. We will do our best during the program to answer the questions that you raise. As a reminder, this program is also being recorded for Facebook Live. JOYA Scholars is a nonprofit organization and is held to the mission to deliver and amplify the experiences of the youth. JOYA wants their scholars from low-income communities in Placentia and Fullerton to recognize who they are and let them know that they really have a future that's worth pursuing, that they have stories worth telling, that their dream to be the first generation college student can become a reality. JOYA believes that it's important, especially during these socio-political times, that we change the narrative of their scholars' lives, and that this happens through education, through service, through hope, and with community support as well. How relationship-based mentorship serves the cultural mindset for marginalized communities is today's presentation topic. The presenter is Christian Esteban, the Executive Director of JOYA Scholars. He became a first-generation graduate in 2014 when he graduated from UC Irvine with degrees in psychology and social behavior and also anthropology. He joined JOYA in 2015 as a volunteer mentor to junior and high school students. In 2017, he was hired as JOYA's program director, and in 2018 was promoted to the position of executive director. So it is with great pleasure that I invite Christian and thank him for joining us today to share the news about JOYA Scholars. Christian?
Thank you so much, Carol. This is such a pleasure. Thank you so much to yourself and the MUZEO.
I don't know if your mic is muted. You might want to.
Oh, let me see. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, I think everyone can see
it
and hear me.
still isn't. If you can hear me, Christian, your mic is still muted.
Let me see here.
I think we're good, Carol. We can hear him.
Okay, I'm getting a good signal from Conde at the MUZEO. So Conde, with your blessing, I'm going to go ahead and continue here. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. This is so wonderful. We love the MUZEO, and we certainly appreciate your hand that you've had in shaping the lives of our kids, as I know we've been able to visit the MUZEO in the past, and including last summer, we were able to visit one of your exhibits. We hope to do the same this summer, granted that we're able to do so. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. I've got a presentation ready to go. As Carol mentioned, and I love how she used the word amplify. So our vision at JOYA Scholars, especially in this day and age with so much that is going on, both locally and nationally, that our mission really is to amplify the stories of your youth. And you'll see one of my favorite photos of me with many of our graduating seniors this year. These are the youth whose voices we truly hope to amplify. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about how JOYA's model of relationship-based mentorship serves the cultural mindset of marginalized communities such as those that JOYA Scholars serves. Before we get into that, I'm just going to take just a couple of minutes to share a little bit about my own personal background. As Carol mentioned, I graduated from UCI in 2014 and started my journey with JOYA Scholars in 2015 and have been with them for the last 5 years in the education and nonprofit sector. But before that, I was born in Turlock and raised in Modesto, California. For my first 18 years, this is a photo of my sister and my best friend. She is my pride and joy, my role model. She is 2 years younger than me, and she is working as a nurse in children's oncology at Loma Linda University Children's Hospital in Redlands, and she's currently living in Rancho Cucamonga. So the two of us, being now newer Southern Californians, we've got to stay close to home however we can. This is a quick shot of the two of us FaceTiming our two wonderful grandparents up in Modesto, who are themselves immigrants from Mexico and who are role models for ourselves. They were able to figure out FaceTime, so much more than we were able to do. And it's been wonderful to be able to stay close to them in a neat way. This is a wonderful picture I love of me with my grandparents, and this is my significant other, Jessica. And just a little bit of background about Jessica and myself. So she actually worked for JOYA Scholars back in 2015, as you can see on the left, when I started working with JOYA as a volunteer mentor. So I was a volunteer for a couple of years, and Jessica exited JOYA in about 2016, and then I was hired on in 2017, and we sort of had a reunion in last year in 2019, and it's been a wonderful year with Jessica. This is a picture I love of me and my mom. Just to share, my mom has been working for over 35 years as an office manager for an OBGYN doctor, and she is wonderful. She has such a youthful, positive, and godly spirit, and she loves Snapchat also. You can't get her off of Snapchat. She always makes my day. This is one of those times where she made my day. This is a quick photo of me and my dad, who again is another wonderful role model of mine. My dad is an avid runner. He a couple of months ago, before the crisis, he ran a 50-mile race, which was astonishing. And this past Sunday, I just got a message from him that he had hiked Half Dome in Yosemite. It took him about 10 and a half hours to do it at about a 45-degree incline. But wow, what a lot of perseverance that he shows and he's been able to demonstrate. Hopefully one day a shred of that perseverance will pass on to me, I like to say. And last but not least, just a couple of things I'd love to share with you that sort of speak to who I am as a person. My favorite band is U2. One of my favorite moments was going to their Rose Bowl concert in 2009 with 100,000 people. My favorite TV show is Everybody Loves Raymond. I often say there are more than enough sitcoms about single 20-somethings. I love shows that show the perseverance and fun and foibles of being together in a family and having a married life. I enjoy hiking. I enjoy movies such as The Florida Project, which is actually near and dear to my heart. It's a movie about that takes place in Orlando, Florida, and a stone's throw away from Disney World, there live many families who live paycheck to paycheck, renting rooms in a motel. And it is so incredible to see the similarity between how we have such grandiose our Disneyland here in Anaheim, and just a stone's throw from that, we see so many communities of families who are struggling. So I highly recommend that movie. On the bottom left, you'll see me and my rooted group at Mariners Church, where I go to church. This is our baptism day. I love volunteering at Mariners when I can. I love podcasts. One of my favorites is Radio Lab, and they don't need my promotion. They're everywhere, but I love human interest stories. I'm a big Disneyland person, so that's a picture of me and Jessica on Disneyland there. And then last but not least, for the last 2 years, I've had the pleasure of having a therapist, a counselor, a meditation, a life coach, what have you. And this is one of those quotes that he introduced in my life a couple of years ago that has stuck with me, and that it continues to inform how I try to live my life. And I'll read that. When we live in the spirit of gratitude, there will be much happiness in our life. The one who is grateful is the one who has much happiness, while the one who is ungrateful will not be able to have happiness. And as we transition now into our work at JOYA, our mission is to inspire and prepare students from families of low-income communities in the city of Fullerton and outlying areas to succeed through higher education. And here's a photo of some of our high schoolers sitting across from some of their mentors. The communities that we serve are predominantly comprised of communities where we have residents who are of a lower income class. They are primarily Latinx and they come from an immigrant background. And we do serve quite a few families who are undocumented. Now, these are some of our middle schoolers who, this was taken last year. This was at the end of our year last year where they had student achievement awards. So each of our middle schoolers who had achieved a 3.0 GPA or higher at the end of the year received some gift cards. This is just a photo of us celebrating them. The two primary neighborhoods that we serve right now are the Garnett neighborhood on the east side of Fullerton, and that is also known as the GEM district. And I do have to apologize. Please let me know if the outside noise becomes too much here, but I'll try to speak up a little bit. We serve the GEM district on the east side of Fullerton, and then we also we've been there for 11 years, and we've now opened up our second community site in the Maple neighborhood in South Central Fullerton, where we've been for 2 years now. At JOYA Scholars, just to give you an idea of the scope of our programs, we serve 86 kids, and we are so excited to be able to share each and every one of their 86 stories that we have to celebrate. Overall, we've now served over 100 kids, as we have currently 31 program alumni who have graduated from our programs and who are now currently attending different colleges, both locally and throughout the state, or have graduated from those colleges as well. As a quick tour of our program, just to give you the sort of the nuts and bolts of how we engage with our kids through our junior high and high school college readiness programs, we have 7 primary services that we've worked to build over the course of the last 11 years. And those 2 tentpole services are mentoring and tutoring. As you can see in mentoring, each of our kids gets together once every 2 weeks, and they sit across from an individual who is their mentor, their academic guide and accountability partner. And our mentors are individuals who have gone through higher education, who have graduated, and who are working professionals. And it is beautiful to be able to see mentors come in to be able to hold our kids accountable, but also to give them a vision of what the finish line will look like once you're past junior high and high school and have graduated from high school and college and have pursued a successful career. Our students every week get together at least once a week with a tutor, and it's been wonderful to be able to have these programs sustain themselves even despite the current health crisis. So our mentors and tutors have continued to engage with the kids over the last 3 months. So we've had virtual tutoring and mentoring sessions. We've been able to connect with, make over 150 video connections with our kids over the last 3 months. Our 3 specialized programs are directed toward our parents, our juniors, and our seniors. As we all know, we can do everything we can to support our students, but if we do not have the support of our parents, then that is, it will be all but a moot point. Our Parent Academy is a 10-week class every spring that brings the college readiness programs into the home, and we rely on the 10 LEA commandments, the 10 Latino educational attainment commandments, to be able to share our parents the current academic system in junior high and high school, but also the higher ed system, which is already so convoluted. So we address questions such as how to pay for college, the differences between public, private, and community colleges and universities, and so on and so forth. Our juniors, up until just this past month, were attending SAT, ACT college entrance exam prep. And of course, we all know with the news coming out of the UC system, and we expect the CSUs to follow that, the SAT test has been put on hold for the next several years so that we can come up with a new and more improved test that has more equity among more ethnic groups. For example, a lot of the kids that we serve are highly disadvantaged when taking college entrance exam prep courses, as the data shows, because they simply cannot afford college prep. They simply do not have the time, the resources, or the funding to be able to prepare for a test. And so it is unequally distributed how certain segments of the population do much better in the SAT compared to other segments of the population. So that, in the meantime, is transitioning now to an SAT prep level tutoring course for SAT level math and language arts for our sophomores and juniors as they prepare for their senior year. And of course, with their senior year, our students undergo the College Apps Academy. We sit down with them for 2 hours every single week throughout their senior year to take them step by step through their college apps, their personal statements, their financial aid and FAFSA, shedding light on everything they'll need to know about. And then of course, prompting them in their spring semester and empowering them to have all of the resources they need to become a successful first-gen student once they hit the college campus in the fall. Last but not least, we love taking our kids on college visits and cultural outings. This is a photo of us at UC Riverside last fall, and recently we've been to Biola University, Cal State LA, Concordia University, Cypress College, UCI, Cal State Fullerton. We believe that within 6 years of our kids being in the program, that if you go to 2 to 4 college campuses a year for 6 years, you will have a very innate sense and a sense of immersion of what each campus has to offer you if you do decide to become a student there one day. And last but not least, we have our cultural outings. And during the year, we love taking our kids to the Fullerton Museum Center. Last summer, we went on a trip to the Anaheim MUZEO here, of course, and we were able to celebrate our time there and go to the packing district after, as many of our kids' first time being at the MUZEO and the packing district. And last summer, we also went to the California Science Center and we checked out the Space Shuttle Endeavour, and they had a wonderful exhibit on dogs, I believe. So those are our core programs. But to really get down to the nuts and bolts of what makes Hoya Scholars different from, I believe, other organizations, is that we intentionally keep the number of our students very small. We do have thousands of kids who go to school, of course, in our local districts, and hundreds that live and breathe in our communities that we serve. But right now we serve around 100 kids. And so we keep our students small and our costs low for a couple of reasons. Number one, we believe in maintaining a 1-to-1 ratio of volunteers to students. So we have, of course, a high number of students, and we have nearly 60 volunteers who mentor and tutor our students week in and week out. And our second reason for keeping the program quite small is that the strength of Hoya Scholars is truly, and we believe, is in our relationships. As you look around North Orange County, there is such a disparity, and our students grow up from, a stone's throw away from some incredible institutions such as Cal State Fullerton and UC Irvine. And yet they grow up not necessarily believing that those institutions are built there for them, that they're meant for them. So what we try to do at Hoya Scholars is not necessarily rely on bells and whistles, but to really rely on relationships and people, to be able to bring in the right people, to have the right conversations at the right time with our kids, to be able to nurture their path and get ready for a higher education and for their success. So today we're going to be talking just a couple of things that I'd like to highlight, specific things that we can look at and that we've found a little bit of success in serving the cultural mindset of our marginalized communities. The first thing I wanted to highlight is the idea of mutual kinship. The idea of kinship often comes around a lot when talking about communities where we want to also serve, but also be served. We're also going to be talking a little bit about cascade mentoring, and I'll identify what that means in a little bit. And last but not least, Indigenous leadership. We hear this term often, a sense where we need to have community-driven programs that are truly driven by the community and not necessarily coming from outside and just dropped within communities because we think it's something that they need help with. So those are the three things we're going to talk about today very briefly. The first is mutual kinship, and this is a photo of Father Greg Boyle, who was our keynote speaker at our last year's fundraising gala and student celebration that we had. And Father Boyle shared a wonderful quote that we had about the sense of mutual kinship. For all the tutors and mentors who volunteer with Hoya, let it be mutual. Stop trying to find students. Let them find you as well. This is how you rewrite the narrative. Allow yourself to be reached, just like you want to reach them. The beauty in having our students and volunteers working together, and the beauty in myself working with my kids and our staff working with our kids, is that we receive just as much as we hope to serve. Just as a quick tangible example of that, this is one of our mentor and students that we've had work together over the last few years. This is Nancy, who 2 years ago graduated from high school, and her mentor, Kyriana. And Kyriana is, nourishing Nancy throughout these years that she has in high school. And at the end of her time in high school, watching Nancy graduate, we asked Kyriana to share her thoughts as a mentor and think about maybe the things that she's received as well. And I just want to share a quick word from one of our mentors, Kyriana. I'm genuinely always motivated to work harder after attending any mentor meeting, as I'm fascinated at the workload and hours my mentees are willing to keep in order to achieve success in school. Often I am reminded of the things I used to worry about when I was in high school. In retrospect, I wish I could have told myself that certain things were just not worth worrying about. It has proven that the purity of motive determines the quality of action. Every time I genuinely did my best, the results added up, and all of the excess worry was unnecessary. I am reminded of that when I work with my mentees, such as Nancy, and I am applying that principle to my life now. So not only is Nancy receiving these gifts from Kyriana, but Kyriana as a mentor is also receiving those gifts. And as Nancy has since graduated from high school, and she graduated in 2018, I was happy to be at her graduation. She has since become a student in majoring in mathematics at Cal State Fullerton. She's just last month finished her second year and has since returned to JOYA now as a mentor. And this is a photo on the top right of Nancy with a member of the local Women's Club of Fullerton, as well as with one of her student mentees, and this is Karina, who is now a junior. On the bottom left, we see a picture of Nancy, who in the November 15th annual Fullerton Women's Leadership Forum received the award, the Rising Star Award, for her local work in the community and for being a role model to her younger kids. And in the bottom right, you'll see a photo of Karina, who is the second of four, with some more of our students who last summer attended the Ronald Reagan Student Leadership Program. And it's beautiful to be able to see how, and as we look at this concept of cascade mentoring, how Kyriana has served Nancy, how Nancy has served her community and has imprinted on Karina these ideals of community, and how she can bring those things forward. And it's beautiful. And as you can see, you can spot Nancy there working with another one of her mentees, Samantha, but this is a photo from one of our mentoring meetings. It is beautiful to walk into our mentoring meetings. And even in our Zoom meetings, it's beautiful to pop into those and just to see everybody learning and growing from one another and truly being a community. And as mentors, knowing that you can learn from your students, you can also learn from the mentors above you. And students, not only can you learn from the mentors above you, but you can pass those things on to your younger underclassmen in high school, as well as the junior high kids. Last but not least, I wanted to highlight the idea of Indigenous leadership. To be able to do that, we really need to understand a little bit more of our family's experiences. And for the last several years, I've reckoned personally with the fact that I do not have the buy-in necessary to be an owner of this community. I have so much more to learn. We have so much listening and learning to do, and we hope to do that with our kids. But in any small way, we want to start by understanding what our family's experiences are, especially if they're coming from a background where they are undocumented, or where they're invisible, or they're just not sure what their place is because of the cycle of poverty that they've been situated in thus far in their life. And so there are so many more things we could talk about, but there are just these three areas that I wanted to highlight and understanding our family's experiences. And that's firstly, navigating with an undocumented status and a new cultural and educational system. Our families have to reckon with the fact that not only are they undocumented, but they don't quite know what that means day to day because things are changing so quickly. There is a true fear and an uncertainty in our families, not knowing not only what their undocumented status means, but what it holds for themselves in the future. Our families also reckon with a new cultural understanding of what goes on. The American culture is so independent. It is so dependent on things such as making money, that there are these cultural divides that our families have had to reckon with to see, what does success look like for my family, but what does success look like for my family in this culture? And then, of course, with the education system, there are so many hoops that our families have to go through just to find equity in things like college access. And so what we try to do is we just try to break that system down to be able to allow our higher ed system to be more nourishing of our families and where they are coming from at a disadvantage. Another area, for example, is a language barrier and role reversal. A lot of our families, they speak primarily in Spanish, our parents, and our students are learning and experiencing the English language as they grow up and mature throughout their time in school and in other areas. And so often what we find is that our parents are thinking and speaking in one language, and our students are learning to, they're speaking in another, and they're learning to think in another. So there's a lot of cultural dissonance that happens just because of language, just because they're in the home. And that idea of role reversal, where we've had so many kids experience having to, for example, take their parents to the doctor or be these unofficial translators for parents. They have to attain this knowledge. They have to speak on behalf of their parents because their parents are not able to do that because of course, our English-dominated society that we have. Because of that, our students rely on, they feel like they have to make decisions for themselves, because if their parents are not going to be completely aware of things, then the student, with holding the language barrier in English, they have to be the ones to sort of set the tone of what their family does. And oftentimes that leads to a lot of independence. It leads to a lot of cultural break for our students within this new culture as they're finding it, because they have to be authorities for their family in this new culture. And our last area of understanding our experiences is living sacrificially and invisibly. Our parents have a lot to endure because they believe that living sacrificially is a part of who they are and what they owe to their family. So for example, living sacrificially would mean being at the receiving end of discrimination, of inequity, and not saying anything, not speaking out, because it is part of our family's responsibility, our parents' responsibility to endure those things for their kids. And because our kids are experiencing their parents living like that, they in turn want to do their part and live invisibly. So in terms of role reversal, our students are experiencing, they must become authorities of their families in this new culture, but at the same time, they feel prompted within their own households to live that life of invisibility out of protection for their own family and their own family's future. So in looking at these high concepts, again, I have a lot more learning to do in these areas. And so I wanted to briefly read an excerpt from Listen to the Children, Conversations with Immigrant Families by Elizabeth Conde Frazier. And this passage, which we just touched on, it's specifically on parents coping with stress related to an uncertain legal status. Parents endure stress as part of the sacrifice they are willing to make for their children. Sacrifice is how they accept the inequalities and hardships. Parents make sacrifices, and children respond to their parents' expectations by living responsibly, which may mean living invisibly. So how do we respond in that kind of sense, and how do we promote Indigenous leadership? Number one, it is our duty to uphold our community members, our parents and our kids, to become the educators of the community. Next spring, our parents will begin co-teaching our Parent Academy class, and it is important for them to be able to have a grasp on what the higher education system looks like, what their rights are as individuals in this space and time, and for them to be able to be the ones who teach that to our other parents who have those same questions in our communities. Another area is, it is our responsibility at JOYA to engage both the parents and the students in the same conversation. When I started working at JOYA as the coordinator 3 or 4 years ago, I would often have orientation meetings and meetings throughout the year with the kids and their parents. And because I do not speak fluent Spanish, I would be speaking in English the vast majority of the time. What I found is that eventually became very dishonoring to the parents, where I had to rely on the students to be the unofficial translator between myself and the parent. And I just found that I was not having the same conversation with the parent that I owed them as I was having with the student, because I was also taking away from the student's experience, because they were just not processing what I had to tell them. They were thinking about how to translate that to their parents. I'm so happy to say that we have coordinators right now who are fluent Spanish speakers who are able to engage our parents and our students on the same level. That way we can have the same conversation and not leave anybody out. And then last but not least, elevating their culture our Garnet and Maple cultures, both within and outside of our communities. And we'll talk a little bit about how we can do that. This idea of elevating culture within communities. So we've had students who have created their own community service organizations within JOYA. And Altrusa of Anaheim had a huge hand in launching this past October. Altrusa of Anaheim, a service club of which Carol, of course, Latham is a part of, came in and visited our students and said, if you would be willing to put together a student-led community service project, then we would be willing to see your projects through, to sponsor your projects, and to help sponsor and support your projects in any way we can. Now, with everything that's happened the last few months, we're still working on what those projects can be. But the catalyst for this was our students' experiences and projects that they've done in the past. So this is just one quick example of a student-led project that is impacting their own community. So this is Ruben and Saul, and a few years ago they put together a birthday box drive in partnership with a nonprofit in Placentia called His House that is right down the street from the Garnet community. And Ruben and Saul found that at His House, there are so many families living there in transition, in transitional housing with children. And while they live there between 4 to 6 months, they're not able to celebrate their kids' birthdays just because of the residency situation that they are in. So Ruben and Saul put out a call to our community and said, let's get together some birthday box supplies. That way our families' kids can just celebrate their birthdays while they're living in transitional housing. And they put out a call to our community, and within a couple of weeks, they had generated over $700 worth of donations of birthday box items, of decorations, and streamers and stickers and cake supplies. And after that, Ruben and Saul led our students during one of our high school mentoring meetings to actually come together and create the birthday boxes. So they wrapped the birthday boxes in wrapping paper, and then they filled the birthday boxes with the supplies. And at the end of it, Ruben and Saul delivered 14 fully filled birthday boxes to His House. And this is Carrie Buck, the ED over at His House. And what a tangible way for our kids to see an issue within our own community that has nothing to do with them and their experiences, but for them to say, I'm in a position to help serve others, so this is what I'm going to do. At JOYA, we love Pixar movies, and I love talking about this a lot. We love Pixar movies. There are so many reasons why when you're watching, for example, the beginning of Up or the end of Onward, that you are just in tears. And that is because Pixar have these very specific rules of storytelling. They have 22 rules of storytelling. Our favorite rule of storytelling here at JOYA is number 7. And that rule is know your ending before you figure out your middle. Know where you want to go before you figure out how you're going to get there. In working with our kids, we really try to uphold the sense that our kids have this vision of this future for themselves. They know where they want to go. They know what they want to do. They don't quite know the middle part of it. And so we really try to uphold our mentors and tutors as those pillars to be able to uplift our kids and help them figure out the middle of the story so that they can cross the finish line at the end. One quick example that it's another service project that reminds me of this rule. And so this is what one of our students, Maggie, there in the middle in blue. And a couple of years ago, she put together a Pearl Park cleanup. And Pearl Park is an abandoned lot behind the Garnet Community Center in the Garnet neighborhood. And it's a disheveled lot. It is, there are vacant cars there. There's just brush and brambles and needles. And it's just a place that draws a crowd that is just not representative of our kids and how they want to see their city and their community. So Maggie put together a Pearl Park cleanup with some help of some of our students and our volunteers, knowing full well that just a few days after a park cleanup, the winds would come in, the trash would come in, and the park would kind of look just like it always had. The importance of this is that during the cleanup, we had some of our neighbors come up to us and they asked, are you guys with the city? Are we going to get a park here? Finally, can we get a park here? Are you working for the city? And we had to tell them, no, we're just there for the morning. We're just there for the day. And we're just cleaning up the park and then the neighboring streets. But there was so much fervor for action, so much fervor to have a park, in our community. And if all we could do to support that was to be out there, just to keep the area clean, then that's what we were going to do. And I love this picture. This is a picture of Maggie and her mentor, Sadia. And Maggie's actually graduating this year from El Dorado High School and is incredible. She's going to IVC in the honors program this fall, and she's got so many big plans for herself. But a few months ago, of course, Mayor Jennifer Fitzgerald here in Fullerton, she announced that the city had received funding to build a park in that area. And it is just beautiful. And I love sharing that news with Maggie. And it's just beautiful to see how Maggie's, what many thought of as this outlandish vision for her community, is now going to be real. It's not going to be realized. And so if all that we can do is to help our students, point them at that finish line, then we will find a way to help get them there. And I really appreciate Maggie for what she did for the community that day. So in the beginning of this talk, you heard that I love Disneyland, and this is a picture of Storytellers Cafe in Disneyland in Critter Country. And it just reminds me that I was talking about, rewriting the narrative and Pixar's rule of storytelling. This year's theme in JOYA, or last year's theme in JOYA, I should say, is rewriting the narrative. And it's led to a lot of great stories and conversations in the power of mentorship in JOYA. And it reminded me somewhat of my own. And I started talking a little bit about my background. I sort of wanted to jump back to share with you just a little bit about why I find so much power in mentoring. And so this goes back to when I was in Modesto. I lived a stone's throw away from Modesto Junior College. And for the first 15 years of my life, I'd come from immigrant grandparents and my, fiercely hardworking blue collar parents and cousins who ended up, are going to community colleges and doing amazing things. And I grew up next to this college, and for 15 years, I had no idea what it was. I thought it was, is this a mega high school? What is this set of buildings? I had no idea what a college was. When I go to the grocery store and I walk around and I see, sweatshirts with 3 or 4 letters on them, UCSB, UCS, what is that? What does that mean? And I had no idea until about halfway through high school. And my parents have always been there for me as mentors, but so has this person. And right now I'm working on something I want to share with our kids, and I'm writing it out right now. And I want to share it with you today because it kind of speaks to where we are today and what we hope to do. So this is why mentoring matters to me personally. So I'm a first-gen college grad, and I'm where I am today because of those who helped me envision a future for myself. My 11th grade US history teacher, Mr. Peterson, he taught me 3 things I'll never forget that I didn't realize he was teaching me until just recently. But these 3 things inform every single decision that I make in working with my kids, and they're going to inform them moving forward. So this was my time halfway through high school. And this is why Mr. Peterson as a mentor to me was so important. And this is what inspired me to get into mentorship and the power of mentorship. So Mr. Peterson, he walked into class every day in the 11th grade. He was wearing a suit and tie, and he didn't put up a fancy slideshow, and he didn't shove a textbook in our face, and which are wonderful resources and tools for learning, of course. But he just sat down with us every day when he walked into the classroom, and he had a 49-minute conversation with us about how we were doing, about history, about what we were engaging in, and how it mattered. And that was the first thing that he taught me, is that a textbook informs a learner, but it is truly a relationship that informs a leader in our community. Mr. Peterson had a lecture towards the end of the year when we got into world history about the Holocaust. He didn't call it the final solution. He didn't call the lecture the atrocities of World War II. He called the lecture bystanders. He taught us that as citizens of this world, we have a responsibility to one another. And I remember as he was saying these words, he was holding back tears because he believed this so fiercely. And he implored us to take seriously the lessons of the past so that we might choose better for our future and for our kids and our future generations. And that's the second thing that he taught me, is that himself as a mentor, he was being so fulfilled by what he was leading us to do. And that is that a mentor is who a student becomes. That's why I have so much pride today in the students that I've mentored, and Nancy, who graduated, and Maggie, who's, who is cleaning up our local lot. Because who I am ultimately as a person, as a mentor, is going to be, is who my students eventually one day become. And that is why we have to have so much weight on ourselves to do this correctly. And finally, the last day of the school year, last day of junior year, Mr. Peterson handed out a final, and it was a tough final, one of the toughest finals I ever took in high school or college. And we handed it in. He asked us to hand it in about 5 minutes before the bell rang, before we were, off in summer, and before we were seniors, and before we were college students. And he rolled in one of those old TVs with the, that rattles when you move it, with the long back to it, and with a VHS player, and he put in a VHS and he played the last few minutes of The Wizard of Oz. And he showed us the moment where the heroes they're confronted by the great and terrible and awesome, powerful wizard that is Oz. And at that point, our heroes, they don't know what to do. They're dumbfounded. They're terrified for their lives. They're backed into a corner, and they can't challenge what's happening. They're helpless. And at that point, the film's unlikeliest character trots over, as you remember, on all fours, to reveal the source of the booming voice of Oz to be that of just a man. And that day, Mr. Peterson said, before we are off as seniors and college students and citizens and mentors ourselves, he shared with us lesson number 3, which is to be like Toto, to never be afraid to be the one to pull back the curtain. So right now, where we are in our societies, and I promise I'm coming close to a close here, but right now our communities are facing a lot, especially with what we experienced over the last few weeks. And we've had to face a mirror to ourselves just as much as anybody else. Today, our communities they are living invisibly. They are living with equity when it comes to college access, but also when it comes to justice in their day-to-day and how others view them. They have so much to do to be able to prove to other people that they are not what a lot of society thinks they are. And our communities are fearful of the status quo. It is so difficult to challenge a status quo when you are living in the shadows. And a lot of our families are responsibly living in the shadows because they feel like they owe it to themselves and their children to not live for themselves, but to live for them. So they are fearful of challenging that status quo. So that leads us to our responsibility when it comes to us being bold and being like Toto, if you will, to amplify the experiences of our communities, not to sort of, mix it into something and have this product of, this is what our kids are. This is so polished. This is, we're Hoya scholars. We're great, all that good stuff. But it's to amplify the true experiences of what the kids are actually doing, what they believe, and what they want to become. It is our responsibility to amplify their experiences as they are, and to share what those communities really are outside of those areas. And it's our job to build empathy with one another. As the saying is that has been going around the last few weeks, that has caused me to reflect and has weighed on me quite a bit. It's that proximity builds empathy, and distance breeds suspicion. Proximity builds empathy, and distance breeds suspicion. We need to be able to hold one another up in the light and be able to empathize with one another truly, so that we're not suspicious of one another, but we celebrate and we find joy in one another's experiences. And last but not least, it is to just advocate for our kids. It's to let them know that they have a place in our future society, and that we're going to continue to surround them with the advocates who are willing to do what it takes to get them to cross that finish line. And just in closing here, I wanted to share some of my favorite photos. And this is one of our grads from last year. And I just love showing Carmen because of the things that she's experienced and what her family's kind of experienced. But this is one of our grads last year. Her name is Carmen. And so she started our program. She was very shy. She was in high school. She was so shy. And we introduced her a mentor who continued to work with her, week after week. We introduced her to a tutor, Eric. This is Eric, who would work with her week after week and is now working with her younger brother. When she started her senior year, we introduced her to the College Apps Academy, and this is one of the Reality Changers College Apps instructor who was able to lead her through a difficult and complex college apps process. This was taken from one of our Hoya-ween days, or so we dressed up, and this is a picture of the two of us with Francisco, her younger brother, and her experiences ushered in Francisco to be part of the program as well, and he's now an upperclassman in high school. This is Carmen and Francisco's mom, Lupe, and this is a picture of her collecting safety goggles at our visit to an environmental center at UCR, and she has been highly involved in our programs. This is Carmen on the right, her older sister, Paula, who is a student at Cal State Fullerton and has joined the program to become a mentor to a middle school student of her own. And not to be left out, on the right, you'll see Carmen and Francisco's older brother, Rene. I know these are a lot of names, gotta bear with me. This is Rene, who did the same last year and was a mentor to one of our middle school students. And as a result of her family, pushing her and being with her, advocating for her, and us at Hoya advocating for her, surrounding herself with mentors, tutors, instructors, all of these things, Carmen has become a wonderful person and student and has experienced so much. This is her on our cultural outing to Northgate Market. This was her at the Ronald Reagan Student Leadership Program last summer. This was her at a visit to the Nixon Presidential Library with her younger brother. This is her at the Fullerton Museum Center last summer, at UC Riverside, at volunteering at Second Harvest Food Bank, during a painting day at our Hoya office. So she is in every single one of these moments. This is me and her Student Achievement Award. And this was the day that she graduated last year. And I love remembering this day so much because as we speak, and I actually have this video on in the background, our kids, and I don't think you can see this now, but I'm playing a video of El Dorado High School's Drive Up graduation. So it's a year to this week that Carmen graduated and held up her diploma proudly. And this is a photo that I took of her and her family after the graduation. And I had the pleasure of going to Office Depot and picking up her giant cardboard photo, by the way, which was a lot of fun to wave around. And I was so proud just to see her and her family all together. You might notice, and this is what I'll close on here, I promise. You might notice that Carmen is barefoot. And it was so interesting that when she walked up on stage and her name was called, that we were all cheering, her family was cheering, we were holding up the sign. And as she walked up on the stage, she was wearing these shoes, and one of the shoes, there's no better word for it, just exploded. It just came undone. And and so she had one of her shoes that came undone and she was walking on it. And she told me she remembers that moment when she's walking towards stage, she's walking to get her diploma, and her shoe explodes out from under her foot, literally. But she says, there is absolutely nothing that's going to stop me from getting here to getting my diploma right now. And she walked over, she got her diploma, she took a picture with the principal, and and afterwards, and I love this picture so much, she gave the shoe to her mom, Lupe, who saw her graduate. I'm sorry. And Lupe told me, I'm never gonna throw away this shoe. I'm never gonna throw it away. I'm always gonna keep it because it reminds me of everything that my kids have done. I'm sorry. And it reminds me that we all continue to stand together, and that nothing's going to stop my kids from succeeding. We're always going to be standing together with one another as advocates for one another in our community. So thank you so much for this time. That is where I wanted to end today. And I really appreciate this space, and I would encourage everyone to take to heart this space of being there for one another, especially in these times that we're all going through, and being advocates for those who feel like they're invisible. So thank you so much. With that, I will turn it back over to Carol.
Thank you, Christian. I am so moved by the presentation and your comments about these scholars and your passion for what you do in making a difference in the lives of these young people and their parents as well. So thank you so very much. I do have a couple of questions, and I think we have maybe about 5 or 10 minutes.
Of course.
Where did the name JOYA come from?
That is a great question. In our insignia, JOYA Scholars, and you'll see it here, we always capitalize the JOYA in all caps, the JOYA. So it always seems as an acronym. And so it actually does not stand for anything, the JOYA. I will say, I've been saying this to a lot of folks over the last few years, if you can think of something that JOYA can stand for that's in alignment with what we do, I'm all ears to turn that into an acronym.
Well, I often heard that in Spanish, JOYA means gem.
Yes.
And in the Garnet area, all the streets have gem names. There's the, Garnet, there's Topaz, so
yes. So
that's where it came from.
That's where it comes from. And of course, we serve the gem district in East Fullerton, and all of the streets are named after precious gemstones, topaz, sapphire, garnet, and so on. And we very much like to think of our students as diamonds in the rough.
Absolutely. It's a perfect name, perfect name. So you have the 2 campuses. Are the needs in both campuses the same, or are there some things that you need in one campus and not in the other?
We have a need right now for the two sites are quite different. With Garnet, we've been there for 11 years, so we have around 60 students in that neighborhood, as opposed to Maple, where we've been there for 2 years, and we have in the lower 20s number of kids in the Maple neighborhood. So what we're trying to do is we have the 7 programs in Garnet, and that works great for them because it's taken 11 years to find that. With Maple, we found that we have to change things because it's a smaller group, and we have to cater to such a smaller group, which is, I think, great as we continue to learn and grow. So that being said, the biggest issue right now that we have differences is we're trying to model the programs differently in each neighborhood, but we're also right now, the biggest thing that we're sort of keeping our eyes and ears out for is we have a big need for technology. That seems to be the biggest need. Right now, we have a wonderful collection of Chromebooks that we use for our Garnet group, but we do not have the same for our Maple kids right now. And as we've done more programs, we leaned more and more on technology, and mentors and students, as they meet, they fill in reports as to how their kids are doing. So technology, and in particularly funding for new Chromebooks is high on our priority list right now.
Okay, so it's not only the actual physical technology you need, you also need mentors who are capable of helping students in that area as well. Yes,
absolutely. And we are recruiting for the fall. We're looking for mentors and tutors for the fall semester right now. And what we really enjoy about being stewards of mentorship is that as a mentor, you pledge to meet for 1 hour every 2 weeks with your student, and it's 2 hours a month. We do ask you to pledge for the academic year from September to May, but for 2 hours a month for 9 months, it makes a difference. Mm-hmm. And so even though it's a long commitment, we try to make it a low level weekly commitment.
Well, this is going to be a 2-pronged question. Is there a referral program for the scholars to be a part of the program? And what is the referral or the guidelines for mentors to be a part of the program?
So our students, they enter the program in 2 different ways. And since we are quite small, it's been very homegrown and based on word of mouth. So every year we'll bring on between 10 and 20 new students, and half of those will be family referrals. So that's how we have families talking to their neighbors or talking to their cousins or tias and tios, and they will refer students to be part of the program, and then we will meet with the family to see if it's a good fit. The other half of students comes from any of the counselors that we have relationships with in the 6 key schools that we work with. And in Garnet, very quickly, that is Tuffrey Middle School and El Dorado and Valencia High Schools. And in Maple, that is Nicholas and Ladera Vista Junior Highs, as well as Fullerton Junior Highs. So some of those counselors do recommend students that they are working with. And for mentors, we typically ask, we do have a fairly demanding interview, just a thorough interview process and background check process, of course. But we do ask our mentors to have a background in higher education or be in pursuit of higher education. You can be a current college student or be solid in your working profession, whatever that might be, or be taking concrete measures to a specific profession, because oftentimes that helps us connect mentors who have a specific profession to students who might be interested in that line of work one day.
Perfect. I remember years ago when we first got involved with this program, we provided snacks for after school so that the students, as they were doing their homework, they had a healthy snack to see them through the homework period. And so to see how the program has grown over the years, it's just very fulfilling. And you mentioned a little bit on some of the colleges that the graduates have been going to. So maybe you could just touch on that a little bit. What are some of the schools that they have graduated and gone on to?
Absolutely. Our very first student, Valeria, who's with us several years ago, has graduated from Chapman and Western Law and is now has her law degree fairly recently. So we're so proud of her. We have many students attending Cal State Fullerton, UC Riverside, UC Irvine. Cal Poly Pomona is a surging new campus. We had last year our first student who went outside of the county, outside of the region to go to school, to go to Sacramento State up north. And then last year we also celebrated our first student to be accepted to UCLA. So now we have Denise, who is finishing up her first year at UCLA. This year, again, we have students going to vocational programs in Fullerton College, Cal State Fullerton, Cal Poly Pomona, and IVC, I believe, this year is where our 10 grads are going. So we're very proud of them, very eclectic.
Fantastic, fantastic. And of course, you are always looking for partners as well as donations to help you further your mission. And I think we're just about out of time, but I just wanted people to know that if they wanted to donate to the program, that they can do that on your website, joyascholars.org. And I believe the fundraiser that you did online the other day is also on YouTube so that they can have a look at. And as I said, they can go to your website. They can also look on the MUZEO, www.museo.org website for a link if they should need that. And we just want to know what your thoughts are on this kind of program, how it's relevant to the community, especially during these kind of uncertain times, and we are still in the Q zone, as it were. And we also ask if you are so inclined to donate to the MUZEO. There's a donate button on our website, and you can donate through Facebook and Instagram as well. I'd like to offer a special thank you to Berkenda Cantlow for all of her work behind the scenes. We couldn't do this without her. And a special thank you to you, Christian, for enlightening us on the wonderful services being provided by JOYA Scholars. And I'm sure our audience appreciated what you shared about the past, what you shared about yourself, JOYA's present, and where you plan to go in the future with JOYA, as well as all of the various ways that are available to help JOYA scholars and their families through this journey towards college and a better life. I'd like to say a special thank you to you, our viewing audience, for tuning in this afternoon, taking your lunch hour and being with us. On behalf of the MUZEO, stay well, stay safe, stay healthy. Until next time. Thank you so much. Thanks, Christian.
Thank you, Carol. My pleasure.